Voting is an opportunity for voices to be heard. It's one of our most important freedoms. Voting isn't just a right, it's a privilege, and the power to speak up and choose people that represent your values and beliefs. KCAT TV is proud to present Coffee&Candidates, one-on-one interviews to introduce candidates running for council in Los Gatos and Monte Sereno. Let's welcome our host, Dr. Larry Gerston.
Hi, I'm Larry Gerston. Let's have coffee with the candidates. Come on in. Welcome to Coffee&Candidates, brought to you by the Los Gatos Community Foundation, the Tour Factory, and the Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company. Also, let's not forget, we're here in the KCAT studios, and of course we couldn't have done it without our sponsors or KCAT, so we thank them all. And today we've got one of those candidates with us, Burton Craig, a candidate for the Monte Sereno City Council, someone who's been around for a while. We're going to talk about that. But first, why don't you give us a little insight into you, what you're all about?
Okay, so thank you very much for having me on today. I am a two-time council member, former council member, as you mentioned. And in my professional life, I'm a technology guy. I love technology. I've been doing it ever since I was in college. So I've had the opportunity to work for some of the big guys, Apple, Symantec, Silicon Graphics, and for some of the old timers, Ashton Tate, the makers of a product called DBase. And now I work for an investment management company. I sort of got out of the computer side of the business and kind of got into the using side of it. So for the last 23 years now, I've been working for this investment management company.
Okay.
I've been in Monte Sereno for about 18 years now, and been in California since 1988.
You're from Florida.
I'm from
correct?
Florida.
What brought you out here?
Computers.
Okay, the place
Yes.
to be.
Yep, started in, as I mentioned, with Ashton Tate. They were based out of Los Angeles, and after a few months in Los Angeles, I said, I can't live here. So there's a lot of computer companies up our way, so I slowly migrated my way up here and did the rest of the computer tour.
So you were on the council for 8 years, termed out, as we say.
Yes.
Mayor twice, I understand.
Correct.
Correct. I'm going to ask you a strange question. What unfinished business do you think you left with? When you're leaving after those 8 years, boy, I wish we would have gotten this done. Anything come to your mind?
There was a big one, and that was to get our council meetings taped and available for rebroadcast. When I was on the council, we did start audio streaming, and we had the ability to listen to those tapes via the internet. Before, the meetings were recorded, and if you wanted to go back and listen to the meetings, you had to do a public record request, and they would then sell you a cassette tape. You had to pay for the cassette tape. It's like $1, nothing extravagant. But we did get live audio streaming, but we never quite got the video part. So when I left office, a little while later, I actually joined KCAT. I'm on the board of KCAT, and I spoke with them, and they said they would be delighted to loan me some equipment, and I would go back every week to the council meetings and record them, and then bring them to KCAT, where they would post them on their site, so that our meetings were, at least there was video of the meetings that people could go back and look at. And at the same time, I gave them to the city because they've always had the capabilities of rebroadcasting the meetings. They just never had any way of recording them. So I was faithfully there every week, or if not, I made sure that somebody from our youth commission was. We got them involved in it. Or I had volunteers. One time the city clerk pulled out her iPhone, and I showed her how to record the meeting, and she sent me the video, and we put it up on our website.
So this was something you wanted done while you were on the council, and somehow it never got done. You got off the council, and by golly, you got it done.
Got it done.
Is that about right?
That's about right.
That's a good story.
It is. Because it's kind of worked its way now into one of the positives with I'll say the pandemic or the shelter in place that we're all living under right now, is that meetings at the Monte Sereno Council have been online. And because they're online, they're able to be recorded and and then put into the archives very easily. So in a way, that kind of worked out. And now the new city manager just showed me the system that he's put in place. They now do have a camera, and they will be streaming their meetings live when they go back to having live meetings. So I'm excited about that.
There's a happy ending. Now let's fast forward and look into the issues that are compelling, you to run again. Why is it that you're running again? What is it that needs to be done or that you think ought to be done that hasn't been done yet?
Well, there's a couple of concerning things. First of all, we had a turnover in our staff that to me is just unheard of. It's a small staff. There's only 6 people that are there, but 5 of them ended up quitting. And I was just amazed that many people would quit in such a short time. First, our city attorney left, and then our city manager left, and then our building inspector. And we were so blessed to have Rob, because before Rob, we had a building official that was one of the reasons I ran for office the first time, because it was, we have to do something about the building official in the city. He's made it very hard for people to improve their properties, and it had gotten to the point where even some builders would say, I don't want to do work in Monte Sereno. It's too hard to do work in Monte Sereno.
The permit process?
No, the building
demands,
inspection process, really.
Okay.
A lot of requests were made that a lot of people said were not reasonable, and I heard some horror stories about that and said that just doesn't sound right. It can't be that hard to do simple things in your house like change a water heater. I would hear horror stories about just doing simple repairs to your house. But since the new building inspector had come on, I heard nothing but glowing reports about him. And so when he left, I said, wow, that's really bad. And then our city clerk, who had been there for over 20 years, finally said, I'm leaving too. She's now the city clerk in Los Gatos. And not only did they leave, but before they left, they actually found it necessary to start a union. And again, small city, we've been incorporated as a city for over 60 years now. Why would a small city of 6 people need to have union representation? And it was because they were not treated with respect, and they were actually looking at having their benefits cut, and they weren't going to, and they actually denied the salary increases that the previous councils had voted to give them. And so they just found it just not a workable situation anymore. And when I was in the meetings, I would actually see the disrespect that some of the council members showed to the staff. And it seems like for the time that I've been out of office, they have spent more time trying to come up with ways to make things work instead of getting the work done of the city. And so that's why I'm coming back.
So you want to see the city work better.
And you want to see the city work better.
And you want to see the employees function in a way where they don't feel, you want to see the environment for the employees in such a way where they don't feel compelled to leave.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
It's very fair.
Yeah. And you think, with your experience, you've been on commissions, I know that. As a city council, you know how the town council works, city council, I should say. You probably think you have some insight into what needs to be done to make it work.
I think
right?
so. Right. We had a very, I want to say, civil council. We may not always had agreed on topics, but we were always respectful to each other. And I always have said that I need to be the kind of person that I can disagree with you, but when they hit the gavel at the end of the meeting, you and I can go have coffee together. And we can have a great time together. You know, we don't have to agree on everything, but we have to be civil to each other.
Used to be like that in Congress. Not anymore.
Wow.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore.
And it sounds like that kind of thing has happened a bit in Monte Sereno, and maybe it'll change now.
I sure hope so.
So looking forward, Burton, what's on your agenda besides having a more amicable arrangement between the council and the workforce? What do you want to see done in Monte Sereno that needs to be done?
The big job is going to be working on satisfying the California state housing mandates. And I know this is a topic all over California, but especially in Monte Sereno and Los Gatos and all the West Valley cities.
You know what? It's such a big job. We're going to take a break so that we can talk about it in full when we come back. How's that?
Great.
Put together your thoughts. Meanwhile, we're going to call and thank Sharon Childs, the head of Los Gatos Community Foundation, and invite her to say a few words.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, I'm Sharon Childs, Los Gatos Community Foundation president. I'm here in Oak Meadow Park by a historic bandstand gazebo where our history started in 1991. We fund local nonprofits for projects that they do to enhance our community. We also give out community service scholarships to our seniors at our 3 local high schools. The Los Gatos Community Foundation is proud to be sponsoring this Coffee and Candidates series.
Welcome back. We're talking with Burton Craig, candidate for the Monte Sereno City Council, former council member for 8 years, and yet he thinks there's more to be done. So we were about to talk about housing in Monte Sereno and your concerns.
So the biggest concern is at the state level. The state continues to make laws that take away the city's ability to zone, which is one of their most important functions. And before I left office, I invited Evan Lowe, our assemblyman, to come in. And it was a pretty dry conversation until near the end. I finally said, okay, Evan, what does the state want a city like Monte Sereno to do? When you look at Monte Sereno and you gaze out over the landscape, what do you envision happening? And he said, I see every house in here becoming a multifamily home. And that really shook me when I heard that. And as I've watched this continue to go on, it's not slowing down. Senator Weiner up on the peninsula continues to introduce bills that will take away the city's rights to zone and to zone for density, which is very important for us here. And they've created this as a blanket solution without even taking into account what cities like Monte Sereno are and what our character is. And when I've gone to some of the gatherings of some of the larger groups, so for example, there's a group called the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, and one of the seminars that they had was about RHNA numbers. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with RHNA, but that's a number that is put into a computer and it gets massaged around in a bunch of spreadsheets, and then every few years they say, okay, each city has this number. They have to build this many low-cost houses, they have to build this many market rate houses, and so on. I think everyone's probably gone through this little bit of education before. And I finally was able to get some time on the podium and say, there's a city in the Bay Area called Monte Sereno, and we are a 1.16 square mile city. We have 1,200 plus homes. We have no commercial. We have 1 school and 1 church. What do you see us needing to do to meet the state mandates when we are completely built out? Well, I expect you to meet your housing numbers. That's the only answer that they would give. There was no backing down from these type of situations.
Okay, let's think proactively for a moment here. What do you think might be done? The state's a big, the big gorilla in the room, so to speak, okay? Hard to believe that a little town like Monte Sereno can be successful in turning around that kind of policy. Maybe they can with a lot of other towns, I don't know. But in the meantime, what can be done to somehow meet that requirement? Do you have thoughts on that?
I do. When I was on the council, we started a program to increase our stock of ADUs, or accessory dwelling units.
Yes.
And we made it easier for them to go in. We made it less expensive for them to go in. We even came up with a program that if you had illegally built one, if you could get it certified that it was safe and habitable, then we would allow it, we would permit it and make it an official unit. And so that built up our stock. And one of the things that I did when I was on the council was get myself onto a couple of housing groups around the city. One of them involved people from groups like the Silicon Valley Housing Trust. And when I first talked to the representative there, he kind of looked at me and said, Monte Sereno, really? You guys aren't really doing much these days, are you? And I said, well, let me explain what we're doing. I told him about our ADU program, and I told him about how we've grandfathered other units in, and I told him how we've gone out and taken a look at zoning different properties, and how we've met with a lot of community resistance, and how we've tried to accommodate them, and all of the work that we've done. And while we may not have been able to produce the amount of stock that they want, it's not like we've just sat back and dug our heels in and said, no, we're just flat not going to do it. But you have to respect that cities like ours don't have the space for it. But we are trying. And he said, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing. And continue on this path, and I think that eventually we're going to get some progress forward in this.
Good. What about offsets, where Monte Sereno pays X dollars to a city with a lot of land to put extra units there that fulfills Monte Sereno's requirements? Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility.
Like the carbon trade-offs, right?
So there's a group called the Cities Association, and I was on that for a couple of years also. And when we were on the Cities Association, what we were trying to do was get groups of cities to band together and say, okay, let's get Monte Sereno and Los Gatos and Campbell together. And it's called a regional number instead of each city having their own number. And they would then say those three cities have to produce the total of the three individual cities, but not one city would have to take it all on. And one of the things that they stressed was that this was not a pay-to-play. So I don't know if that's really going to be a solution yet, because, and again, things may have changed in the 2 years that I was off of the council, but when we last talked about this, there was not a lot of excitement to have to pay to have other places take your housing stock. And you know, I just want to say one more thing, is that there's a lot of housing that's been permitted in the Bay Area. And I think that what we should help the state understand is that they need to build what they're already permitting. For example, I work in downtown San Jose, and I'm right in the middle. I'm actually in an office building that's going to be demolished and built into a $3.8 million redo of the Park Center Plaza. And across and across the street from me, there's two 24-story towers of apartments that were permitted over 2 years ago. Across from State Road 87, there's there's 5 acres of land where they've permitted 2 10-story apartment buildings. On Post Street, they've permitted high-end condominiums to be built there. So not one site has broken ground on this yet. And so I think before the state starts pushing on towns like ours that don't have the room to put these kind of projects together, they really need to figure out programs to put in place to get the projects that they've already permitted off the ground and moving.
Okay. There's a lot to think about there. I think a lot of people have been helped by that, about what you were saying. What about the congestion we're talking about that we have, especially in the summer? Down 17, but not just down 17, all the streets that feed in.
Beach traffic.
Yeah, not only Highway 9, but the smaller streets where people are going to avoid the bigger streets. I know it affects the Monte Sereno, not like it does Los Gatos, but it affects Monte Sereno. What are your thoughts about that?
My first thought is that I sure hope that nobody needs emergency services during those periods, because it is an absolute gridlock. And I know that different emergency services have had problems there. We talked to Caltrans about it when I was on the council. We had a select group with different traffic organizations around the Bay Area, and we got a nice round of, we're going to look into this for you. We'd love to help you. But no, you can't close off Lark Avenue at 17. No, you can't close off Highway 9. No, you can't close this street. No, you can't close that street. but you know, we're going to help you. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Now, I think Los Gatos has done a great job in experimenting on trying to find different ways to alleviate the traffic. They close off the entrance to Highway 17 over there. We have to find some way to get some cooperation from the different mapping companies, because they look at all available streets and they just use them to try to help people get to where they need to go.
Yeah.
So we may have to talk about a system of strategically closing streets at certain times during the day and trying to make sure that we don't affect too many people, or at least come up with some type of an equitable way where certain streets can be closed one weekend, maybe not the next weekend, and hopefully with some advanced planning, people will be able to plan their trips to get around during beach traffic hours.
Obviously, a lot of problems waiting to be solved, and
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why you're running for a third term.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, Burton Craig. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. That'll do it for this segment of Coffee and Candidates, and we'll see you soon. Take care.